Hello, friends.
Hey, mamas.
Welcome to My Invisible Disease podcast. We are here to share our struggles and hacks as two moms living with chronic illness.
Tune in and join our community as we share stories and experiences while we sort through the ups and downs of living with invisible disease. Hey, girl.
Hey.
I am so excited to share Ambre Minty's story today with our listeners.
Yes, she is a mom and chronic illness warrior and advocate. She is a patient leader and a feeding tube advocate, also an Oley ambassador. So welcome, Ambre, and thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, thank you for having me. I am excited to be here. Hi.
We are so excited to hear from you.
Oh, thank you. So I'll share a little bit of my story if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So I was briefly diagnosed in 2011 with dysautonomia. And from there, it just kind of spiraled and snowballed into a pile of dumpster fires. From there, it went to severe gastropresis, to Ehlers Danlos, to colonic inertia, full GI failure. It just kind of seems to be ever evolving. And I thought I was done for a while until on the 13th, I was diagnosed with eosinophilic esophagitis. And now I get to go gluten-free, all the exciting things. But it's been a journey of living with GI conditions and getting the most basic of care, which does not seem to exist in the state of Florida because there are not enough actual specialists for what I have. I think there's 5 in the entire state of Florida, 3 that will do TPN and feeding tubes. So
tell me a little bit about your symptoms. Like, how did you know things were starting to go astray? Like, how did you end up in the doctor's office to work on this?
Yeah, I started off in 2011. I was collapsing randomly. I was a jogger, runner, 5Ks, 10Ks, and I would just start dropping like flies. We discovered it was actually my heart rate was getting too high, and I would go into weird tremors and pass out. 3 surgeries later, we thought we had it under control. Pacemaker was put in. It was not under control. I was then diagnosed with postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, as well as orthostatic intolerance, meaning when I stand up, my heart rate likes to go pitter patter and I like to drop. My blood pressure is also...
That's terrifying.
Yeah. It's so scary because my blood pressure will drop as well. So yeah, anytime I stand up, it can be... I can say I'm immensely blessed that since my pacemaker, I have not actually fainted in 11 years. So that has prevented that, but I still get the woozy, dizziness feeling sometimes.
Stood up too fast.
Yeah.
Right. So that started, and then that just kind of progressed for a few years because we just could not seem to get it under control until we discovered IV fluids, and it seemed to be the magic answer for me, which I've been doing since 2014, IV fluids. And then I started having trouble eating, really nauseous, bloating, full easily. And we went to the doctors and he's like, I think you have gastropresis. Did the test. Sure enough, I had severe gastropresis. My delay
what exactly is that?
It is actually a delayed emptying, so slow digestive paralysis of the stomach. So average time is about an hour to an hour and a half. Some of us with the more severe side can take up to 12 hours to digest a small meal.
Oh, wow. Yeah. So that is definitely something that interrupts life.
Yes. It was so debilitating. And by 2018, I was averaging 500 calories a week.
Oh my God.
By mouth.
So you must have lost a lot of weight.
I lost 45 pounds.
Energy.
I was so lethargic. I couldn't do anything. And then I ended up needing a feeding tube, which worked temporarily until we discovered it's my entire GI system that doesn't function correctly. So I ended up on IV nutrition called TPN in 2020. And that was heartbreaking. And then my symptoms just kept progressing. I was having trouble with bowel movements. I was really struggling. And then we did one more test and it showed colonic inertia. So I actually had emergency surgery in January of 2021 for a colostomy. So I have a colostomy now. But the good news is I had my feeding tubes removed last year. I'm no longer on tube feeds. And I'm no longer on TPN because I am a pyloric Botox success story. So it's been a roller coaster. It's been a journey, but I wouldn't be where I am today without, some really close people cheering me on the sidelines and kind of lending me strength when I didn't want to get up some days.
So then would it all be connected with kind of with the heart rate? Was that connected to the digestive issues?
So it actually is. So Ehlers Danlos, which is a connective tissue disorder, it seems to be the underlying cause that kind of broke out and caused everything else. So it's just that final puzzle piece that I got when I was 33 and I'm 36 now. So it took that long to get that final diagnosis that tied everything together, but it's all interconnected.
And Botox saved the day.
Yeah,
Botox saved the day. So, I mean, I haven't been able to actually eat a meal since probably 2019, 2018. Wow. And we had a big spirit night at my son's school at one of the local restaurants on Monday. And I had ribs. It was the first time I'd actually been able to eat. Wow. We went out to dinner. I went out to dinner in November to an amazing Italian restaurant in Jacksonville, Florida. And I was able to get gluten-free penne. And I was able to eat it. And I'm like, this is okay. So we've been...
I cannot imagine, just eating pasta again.
Oh, man. I'm so excited. I was like, you know what I want? And, PF Chang's to get, the sesame chicken. I mean, I probably do that every other week just because I can now. Yeah. So, but it's been night and day to be able to say I'm a success story that I can eat again. So
I can only imagine how isolating that was for you. Just something so small of going to a function at your kid's school, being like, oh, sorry, I'm not going to eat your ribs. Or, this time you got to eat them, but for so many years.
And
people are like, what do you mean you can't eat this?
Mm-hmm. It was hard on my family when it initially happened and when it really progressed to the point where we were in the severity of the disease. And I don't think we realized how much food is centered in our social lives.
Yeah.
Holidays are impacted.
So yeah.
One of my safest foods was actually potatoes and eggs. So anytime we went anywhere, it was potatoes, French fries, mashed potatoes, baked potatoes, French onion soup if they had it. So I was lucky that I was surrounded by people that made that extra step if we were going to a restaurant to know if they had something I could safely eat. But so it was hard for a long time to just nope, I'm not eating, because then people look at you like you're weird because you're sitting there at the table not eating. And some restaurants wouldn't let me order off a kid's meal. Some would. And I'm like, I'm not spending $20 for a meal that I'm not going to eat. So Monday.
And this is, I think, too, where the idea of the invisible disease comes in, because people look at you and think you're
perfectly fine,
perfectly healthy. And they don't realize some of these accommodations that need to be made for your health. Yeah.
I think I did a disservice, especially with some close to me, that I just kind of hid a lot of it.
Yeah.
And I write with Health Union, and that was actually a series I just did with those closest to me, an interview series where I wrote an article from their perspective as I interviewed them. And it was enlightening of how much this impacted them as well. And I just wasn't prepared to really hear how some of my closest friends and family really dealt with my health. And I think looking back now, I can say, I don't think I would be where I am if I didn't go through what I went through. I feel stronger that I've come out through it, but I missed food. And now I'm hungry. Now I'm learning my hunger cues again. It's just because I think I'm hungry doesn't mean just go scarf it all down. But it was hard, but
do you have any tips for knowing that? Because I sure as heck do not have that.
I'm still learning. So no. I'm not so good at it still.
And you mentioned too that you have a 13-year-old son. I just think about like how the impact of not being able to eat and like clearly, you know, the social, but you have adults around you that understand. Like, how did it impact, I guess, like parenting, like energy levels with parenting, you know, that guidance that you're giving a young child when you're struggling.
Eat healthy when I can't eat. Right. Mm-hmm. So I'm lucky. I'm so lucky with the kiddo that I have. I mean, he has a heart of compassion, a heart of understanding. He's just really great. And he's probably more on top of it than I am sometimes, especially with my food allergies. But he's always understood. He's always been pretty understanding to like, should you be eating that? I'm like, yeah, I'm hungry. But should you? You know, so he's been pretty good. But the energy levels until about 2 years ago were really difficult. I'm also anemic, so that kind of sometimes plays into it as well. But for the most part, we just kind of learned to adapt with my energy levels and make memories within whatever energy levels that I have that day. If it's a movie day, it's a movie day. If it's a board game day, it's a board game day. If we want to go to the museum, we're going to the museum. So we've just kind of adapted our days to whatever I'm feeling that day. He does like movie days, though. Those are his favorite.
I know we talked about just like, you know, getting the coloring kit set up for the kids and, you know, on those days where sometimes you can't get out of bed and, you know.
He does this thing because I have a cry cut machine and he likes to do tie-dye sometimes. And sometimes we just design T-shirts and we just make them. I mean, because that's pretty low energy.
Did you call it cry cut? Is that what it's supposed to be called?
I don't know. So that's like a conversation we argue about all the time, him and I. I'm like, it's a cricket. He's like, it's a cry cut. I'm like, is it a cricket or a cry cut? And I've asked at Michael's and they don't even know either.
They don't know.
So
we might need to take a poll in the Facebook group about this because I thought it was cricket.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think I said both. I don't know. Everyone knows what it is. So
it's so fun though. It is a very fun tool. My kids love using it too.
It is.
Yeah, maybe we can get them to sponsor this post.
That would be amazing. I use it a lot. I'm making a new T-shirt this weekend. So.
Are you? What's it going to say? Or what's the plan for it?
My health may be chronic, but this ass is iconic.
Oh, I love that.
Oh my God, I love it. Well, and it sounds too like, you know, I heard you say it, that you kind of now feel stronger from coming to the other side of the journey. But, you know, it sounds like that you have really stepped up in advocacy for other people that are dealing with some of the same issues and experiences. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
So I actually fell into that by pure chance through an Oley Foundation, because I'm an Oley ambassador as well. One of their conferences, and I believe 2019, I ended up connected with IFFGD, which is a nonprofit for GI disorders. And it just kind of spiraled into what it is now. I am heavily involved in advocacy and lobbying in Capitol Hill. I'm there several times a year. I'm actually leaving in about 2.5 weeks for another DC trip where I'm actually a keynote speaker this time at the conference. But it has become my passion. It has become my heart. But there's times where I have to take a step back because I have to put me first. And I tell people all the time, I can't pour from an empty cup. Nobody can. So if I can't take care of me, I can't help anybody else. But I do advocate very heavily in a variety of ways, but mainly legislation seems to be my focus. I seem to be the best at that.
So what kind of stuff are you striving for right now? Like, what's your goal?
Right now for advocacy, there are 2 key pieces of legislation I've been working on for the last 3 years. We came so close last year. One is the Safe Step Act, which would make the fail first protocol that insurance companies require null and void. It would also change the protocol, if it's not null and void, to a 24 to 72 hour turnaround time from the insurance companies.
Wow. Them
requiring us to fail a medication to get to the medication that our doctor deems necessary is absurd and ridiculous. And I've fought that. I'm currently fighting that. And it's so frustrating. So that's probably my biggest piece that I'm working on so in depth. There's the Medical Nutrition Equity Act, which covers medical necessity foods, as well as feeding tubes, supplies, formula, and total parenteral nutrition.
So I just have a question for this, because I haven't had to ever like source feeding tubes or anything like that. What do you think like the financial obligation is to like maintain a feeding tube situation? Like are we looking at like $50 a month? Are we looking at $200 a month? Like what are we looking at?
One of the feeding tube formulas I was on was $1,200 a month.
Wow.
And that's just the formula. TPN can range from a couple $100 a day to a couple $1,000 a day.
Wow.
Mine was about $250 a day. And that's just insane. The bag of nutrition.
And how long does that last you? Like, how long does a bag last?
I was on 8-hour cycles. So I would only do one bag for 8 hours. And then the next night I would start all over again. But I have a different condition. I have a different offset. I can only do 4 days a week, where most people do 3 times the limit. What I was doing, you know, volume wise, but they're doing 7 days a week. I couldn't do it for a multitude of reasons. But the financial cost of a feeding tube to manage it and the formula that's not covered by insurance is in the thousands.
Like, that's amazing crazy that you are like helping step up and advocate for people. Like, we're in Canada and it has universal healthcare. Like, these aren't things that we and just an extra
work
barrier.
With a lot of Canadians with feeding tube issues because they can't get the supplies either.
Well,
so
and we had a friend that
a lot up there.
Yeah. And they had a difficulty. I mean, they were looking for plant-based and like different things for like formulas, and it was really difficult. And it's amazing, the idea that when someone's suffering so heavily that there are so many obstacles along the way that you don't even think about, and that monetary situation, you know, is it's such a big one.
It is, and I don't think people realize how much some of the formula costs. And once I started getting me numbers, people are like, wait, really? I'm like, yeah, the one formula I was on was about $1,200 a month.
That's great.
And luckily insurance covered it, but for so many, they don't, or they cover it partially.
I know I was shocked to hear, just because I have kidney disease, but like dialysis, that it's like $35,000 a month. Like, I was just like blown away. Like, you know, so some of these costs that, you know, if you have the privilege of having coverage, but not everybody does. Yeah.
No. And that's one reason I was working on the Medical Nutrition Equity Act to get the coverage there, because it just doesn't exist across the board right now.
Yeah, that's amazing. So then, being that you've really stepped into that role, can you talk a little bit about maybe, you know, some of the community, the relationships, also where you did receive a lot of your support? Because I know that's one thing that you and I were even talking about, like sometimes family groups or, you know, friends and relationships, you know, things can change when you are struggling with chronic illness. And, you know, maybe just speak to your experience with that, because I think it's such a common thread for people that are in the thick of it. And, you know, it can feel, as Cassie had mentioned, so isolating. So if you don't mind speaking to your experience, that'd be great.
So I initially struggled with the diagnosis. I had a really close-knit family, close-knit group of friends. My best friend, we've been friends since high school. When I say since high school, I believe since sophomore year of high school. So we're going on about 20 years now. We've been friends. She has probably been the number one in the last 10 years of all of this. She has seen me cry. She has seen me at my worst, at my best. She is my cheerleader. She is my rock. She is everything and above. I was lucky with having a really supportive family dynamic. My parents were really supportive. I know it took a toll on them. I could see that it was taking a toll on them. My son, you know, I actually met a few friends through support groups. Unfortunately, I lost a dear friend a couple of years ago, and that was a hard loss for me, you know, and for the community. And I've gotten some support from some groups. I've left a lot of them because I've felt they've become almost so negative that that's all it is anymore. And I have a real hard time being in the groups that are just so inherently negative that there's nothing else about it. And I struggled, with depression and anxiety, and being in the groups just was kind of amplifying that.
Yeah.
So I've gotten a lot of my support from family and friends and some group members, some groups. But for the most part, the groups I feel are hit or miss sometimes.
I think that a lot of people are just those, what do they call them? Keyboard warriors, right? So they go on there, they spill their negativity because there's no one there to support them in their situation. Like they're also in that terrible situation. But man, some of those Debbie Downers on those sites are just the last thing you need to read.
I've brought that up to a few admins before. I'm like, you're creating this atmosphere that is not good. Like this can be dangerous, and it's just not well received. And I mean, everyone is different. I understand we all need events sometimes. And I know not everything is rose-colored glasses. I mean, I've struggled with depression significantly in the last, 6-7 years. But it's hard to be positive sometimes, especially in the groups. And I've noticed when I ask for support or guidance in them, it's kind of, you take my answers, and if you don't like it, then it's almost an attack. And I'm like, well, kind of not how it should be. So it's kind of hit or miss in some of the groups.
And are most of the groups that you had been kind of connecting with on Facebook or what?
Mostly Facebook.
Mostly Facebook. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there's definitely, my experience with groups is probably, there's ones I've left and there's ones I've stayed in. And some of the ones I've stayed in, it's actually helped my journey because I've been able to suggest different things to my doctors, and there is some advocacy within that. And, but absolutely, it's that, and they might not have anywhere else to vent to, but that also might not be the place to just bring up negativity. But there is a choice to what we, present to the world. And I think when you can bring forward some hope, and I think even like listening to your story, the fact that you are a Botox, success story, bringing hope to other people is something that is so inspiring. And even just the fact that we're still here, we're still trudging through, and it's, there's a piece to that to be shared. So we had kind of talked about our little segment. If you want to introduce it, Cassie, just kind of some of our hacks.
Have you heard of the game Marry, Fuck, Kill?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's basically a spin on that. And we tried to change the words so that there was less F words. But at the end of the day, what did we land on? I don't even remember.
What do I have? Marry, cheat, screw.
Marry, cheat, screw. Okay. So marry would be something that you love. That's like one of your go-to for self-care or like implementing in your daily life. Cheat is something that you're like into, a little bit more fad related. Like anyways. And screw is something you're over and you don't want to deal with. So you can choose which one you want. So if you were
here,
it's okay. This is a safe space.
I'll go with, I guess we'll start with marry.
Okay. What are you marrying?
My self-care would probably be my bubble baths and my Kindle. That's my jam.
How often do you?
Every day.
Every day. Beautiful.
Every day.
Yeah.
Every night. I take my bath, my bubble bath. That is my 30 minutes. Leave me alone. Don't talk to me. I don't exist. Phone goes on D&D. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
I love that for you.
Yeah. If only I can get that 13-year-old to acknowledge that this is mom time. Leave me alone.
Yeah.
Leave me alone.
I don't have a door on my bathroom, so I can't do that.
I literally make a joke with my husband that if the bathroom door is closed, he'll pop his head in. And I'm like, if I leave it wide open, no one even notices. But as soon as it closes, if I'm having a bath, there'll be my husband will pop his head in, like both kids will pop their heads out and be like, what is going on? But yes, I think it's so important to take that time. And that's an accomplishment that you're taking it every day. Like it really,
every day,
such
because
a difference.
I always say I can't pour from an empty cup. If my cup is empty, I can't help anybody else. And if I don't put myself first, how can I be a good mom? Like I tell people that all the time, like you don't have to do expensive things with your kids to make memories. You don't have to do expensive big trips. You can do small things and make those memories. And I think that is what we lose sight of.
Mm-hmm. Totally. All right. What are you screwing?
Ugh, I'm over yoga.
Over it? No more yoga for you?
I think it's been pushed at me, that and acupuncture in the last 3 months has been pushed at me so hard. I'm just kind of
over it.
I'm over the suggestions of maybe you should try yoga. I'm like, I do Pilates. I'm flexible enough with the Ehlers Danlos. I don't need more flexibility.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's it. Like when you're taking that mindful like moment for yourself in the tub, I think that's what so many people, for the mental side of it for yoga, like sometimes they need that to get into it, but you're already finding that groove for your body. I'm over acupuncture too. I'm scared of needles and I tried it and I kept going and it gave me so much anxiety to see the appointment on the calendar. I'm like, screw this. This is not for me.
It's just, it's heavily pushed. Oh, chiropractor. I think maybe, you know what? I'll do the yoga overseeing a chiropractor. That is pushed big time in some of the groups I'm in. And I'm like, I have a bad back. No, thank you. We're not doing a chiropractor.
And they're not going to cheat. What is your guilty pleasure these days?
My guilty
besides
pleasure.
Your newfound carb love.
I would say probably my wee yogurts or my ice cream.
Yeah.
Any like particular flavor?
Vanilla. I'm boring.
I love vanilla ice cream too. I get that.
Yeah. I'm very picky about my ice cream, so it depends on where I get it. I'm not a Breyers girl. I don't like Breyers. I don't like Haagen-Dazs either. So we go to one of the local ice cream shops and get their soft serve.
Little creamery. So, what? When you have experienced what you have of not being able to eat and years of struggling with food and digestion, like I can just imagine what an indulgence that would be. So it was funny. That was my indulgence the whole time. Oh. Like my dietitian, because it was a safe food. My dietitian is like, I don't even care how much you eat, just eat it. Yeah,
just have at it.
Calories to it.
So right. So that's been my guilty pleasure for probably the last 2 years. Wow. But I try now to like leave the ice cream for the weekend and do the yogurt during the week. Like I'm trying to do the healthy route. But sometimes you just need a good ice cream in a bubble. Sometimes that's just what you need.
Absolutely.
So, Amber, we know that you have the website livingwithdys.com.
Yes.
If anyone else, and we'll have that in the show notes, a link for anyone that's looking to check it out. Can you tell us too, if anyone's looking to kind of continue the conversation, maybe they're struggling with similar, diagnosis as yourself, where else can they find you?
They can find me on Instagram as well under the same name, living_with_dys. I believe there's a link to that on my website as well. And there's a contact me section on my website. They can reach out that way as well. And my Facebook page for my website also has a contact me button. So pretty available. Just some days I'm a little slower to reply than others.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Thank you.
So appreciate you taking the time to be on here with us. And for anyone that is looking for more information, check out the show notes.
Good luck at your speaking engagement that you have coming up. I can't wait to hear how it goes.
I've got to do a 30-minute presentation and I have one slide done.
You got this, girl.
I got this.
Hey mamas, we see you. And we want you to join our Facebook community where we can connect and continue the conversation.
Join our private Facebook group at My Invisible Disease, because no one should go through this alone.
Thank you for listening, and check us out at myinvisibledisease.com.